What's up, everybody? I'm Jay Miller. You'll learn more about me in the next slide. It's not that important. But I want to talk a little bit about my journey through neurodiversity. Also, give people who may not either think that they have ADHD, but maybe they got some friends. I'll also use ADHD to mean a lot of things. Don't worry, I got some ground rules. We'll get there. It'll all be cool in the end. So yeah, let's jump in real quick. I know I'm purple here. I'm not purple. Apparently that's the room. It's not me. There's nothing they can do about it. My slides are also purple, so if things are hard to see, just let me know and we'll figure it out. Yeah, I'm a senior cloud advocate at Microsoft. I focus on Python. I'm heavily in the Python community. Right now, one of my biggest goals is increasing the amount of speakers of color in general. I live in San Diego, where normally if I say black speakers, they're gonna be like, "Que pasa, wey? What about me, homie?" And I'm like straight up. My neighbor actually called me out on that one time. He was like, "Hey, you do stuff for like black folks, right?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "What about us?" And I was like, "Well, you do quinceañeras, right? What about us?" Like, I'm trying to get tacos. But yeah, I'm also a Marine veteran. That's what got me actually from Macon, Georgia to Okinawa, Japan to San Diego. And then my wife got me to stay. And as you will soon learn, I like jokes. So hashtag dad life. I'm a dad. Dad puns are a thing. It's going to happen. Sorry or not sorry. But I want to talk about my first job as a person in tech outside of the military. And I worked for a company that sold toilet paper. It was a shit job. That was a dad joke. Come on, you gotta follow me here. All right, but yeah, I was an IT administrator for a company that sold toilet paper. I eventually moved into marketing for that same company. And then my job was to make sure that the images and the descriptions on the website were cool. Now, I don't like sitting there and typing. Manual entry is not my thing. So I decided to get some automation involved. Productivity went up, and I was cool. Until the automations broke, and I was stuck having to fix a bunch of stuff. Productivity went down, and I was not cool. And then something weird happened. I knew what to do, but I couldn't do it. And I don't know why. Like that was like this weird thing of like, literally push the button. I wonder what's happening for lunch today. Push the button. And like, I would sit there and just struggle in this moment of knowing exactly what needed to happen, knowing the steps that needed to keep going to make things work, but I couldn't actually get myself to do them. Until finally one day I had a panic attack outside my boss's window. I didn't realize I was outside my boss's window. Rule number one about panic attacks, don't do them where you can get fired. Or just don't do them. That's probably should be rule number one. But my boss, seeing that I was sweating, came out and gave me probably the most important information ever. He said, "Hey, look, something's not right. You're acting like my son right now. And if I got to act like your dad, what I'm going to tell you to do is the same thing I told him. Go talk to somebody." So that's what I did. I talked to a doctor. I don't know how much, he wasn't purple either, so we'll get there. And that doctor, after talking with me for a while, said, "It sounds like you got ADHD, social anxiety, and PTSD. And I said, "Okay, I'm a Marine veteran, so the PTSD thing I understand, but the ADHD and anxiety kind of threw me off because, I mean, I'm standing on stage right now. Y'all really don't see all the stuff happening inside, but like I'm on stage. You know, I'm getting up, I'm talking, I'm presenting, I'm doing the marketing thing, I'm being very charismatic, and then I'm going home and like just letting it all out and sweating and like crying deep down inside." But my whole thought was like, you gotta be kidding, right? This isn't me. This can't be me. I mean, even in the Marine Corps, like I was a Marine. How do people with ADHD function in the Marine Corps? That doesn't even make sense. And then he put me onto some game that made a whole lot of sense after that. What if your success was because you found jobs where your ADHD and other comorbidities were an advantage? And I was like, oh, wait a minute, that's kind of cool. So wait, you're telling me there are jobs out there that actually people with ADHD excel at because their ADHD brain allows them to think about things differently outside of the normal realm of what other people are doing. So it just makes you look like you're just better than everyone else, which I'm not going to say that I was, but I mean, hey. So that was my story. That's how I got diagnosed with all of my different neurodivergencies. And as we're going through the rest of this talk, I want to lay down some ground rules because obviously I'm not a doctor. I don't even have a PhD. I don't even have a college degree. So like y'all listening to me right now, I don't know why, but that's the first one. I'm not a doctor. Also, I'm not the Lorax. I don't speak for all the trees. I don't speak for every single racial group, every single gender group, every single sexual orientation, nor do I speak for every single mental illness that is out there. I've got the ones that I got. That said, I did get a lot of help from different people with different mental, I don't even want to say illnesses, different neurodivergencies, which I think that's actually the next slide. Nope, that's the wrong one. Also still not a doctor, still not the Lorax. Yeah, you're going to see the phrase ND pop up. That stands for either neurodivergence or neurodiversity. It's common in the ND space, but like, as you can tell, every time I try to say it, my tongue gets like tied up. So I'm gonna just start saying ND from now on because it makes me think I'm an indie like artist or whatever. And if you know what stimming is, if you're in here and you have ADHD or you have ASD or whatever, if you start stimming, you might see me like playing with this little thing. Yeah, it controls the slides, but it also keeps my hands occupied, so I'm happy with that. If you got to do that, I'm not going to be offended. If you got to get up and walk around, still not going to be offended. If you want to get up and give this talk with me, I might be a little offended. But ultimately, if you got to do whatever you got to do to make sure you're processing what's happening, even if you're not even looking at the screen or me, I do that a lot in meetings. And sometimes my boss is a little worried about me, but I understand what they're saying. That's cool with me. And also, I think I misspelled openness, which is cool, but my openness is privilege. It is. I actually had, I'm not going to say who they are because they didn't say I could say, but I had someone tell me earlier today as we were talking about the different struggles that a lot of black folks deal with in tech. And they're like, look at the privilege that we're at right now where we can talk about these things openly while still making six-figure salaries. So I took that to heart and I wanted to think that. So shout out to that person. Also, like I said, I might say ADHD a lot. ADHD for me means ADHD, anxiety, PTSD, and I tested for ASD type 1, which is autism spectrum disorder. Ultimately, if I have it, if I don't have it, the medication that I'm already taking treats it, so why pay more money, to be honest? So yeah, we've already talked about this is me, so I'm going to jump straight into the advice for those that are diagnosed or undiagnosed, and then I'm going to give some advice for allies and their managers. So now I'm going to do a quick survey. If you're comfortable with it, if you're not comfortable with it, keep your hands down. How many people here know that they have some form of neurodiversity or neurodivergence? ADHD, ASD, PTSD, dyslexia, bipolar, type 1, type 2. Okay, cool. Yes? Whatever you feel is right for you. All right, I love it. I love it. All right, cool. How many people were diagnosed after they turned 18? Okay. How many people were diagnosed after someone told them about them having ADHD, ASD, and whatever? You were like, hey, that's a lot like what I'm doing. Okay, see, this is the problem. This is what I'm trying to fix right now. So everybody here got diagnosed, and what y'all may not realize is you telling somebody might be the reason they get diagnosed. In fact, I know that's happened many a time in my life. So I've just been talking about ADHD, all this other stuff. Why the diversity angle to this? Well, that's rooted in a lot of history. Most people of color actually discover that they have a neurodivergence due to some form of trauma. Again, see me having a panic attack right outside. I mean, that's not even like serious trauma. That's just like a bad work day. So imagine how many people sit there and they take that trauma home with them, they compartmentalize it, and then they don't think anything of it. So you got a lot of people who would normally get discovered in this way not getting discovered. Why? Because they don't know. They don't even know that it's a symptom of that. One of the interesting things about this as well is that even if you go seek mental help, the person that you're working with may not experience the same cultural challenges that you face, because 86% of the psychology workforce is white. However, that other 30% down there, 30 some odd percent of people are not. So it's more likely that you're going to be talking to someone who's sitting, at their desk or whatever, that doesn't look like you, that doesn't have the same experiences that you had. And to quote Renee Backus, the lack of public acknowledgement and accepting around neurodiversity in the Black community is a contributing factor to societal imbalances they face. How many people here, like me, were just told they might be hard-headed as a kid? Right? How many people were told they were lazy? How many people were told this by a doctor? Okay, so see, this is what happens when you have the wrong people in the room, or the people not being taught how to work and communicate with those individual folks. In fact, Duke University did something that, I was focusing a lot on Black folks in this case because obviously check the skin tone. But even in the Asian community, there are a lot of instances where traditional Asian families follow those traditional backgrounds that are very akin to how a lot of Black folks live. To where, whether or not it's traditional familial roles, whether it's the fact that, again, we don't go and talk about our business to any and everybody, or just out of fear of embarrassing their parents. So for that reason, a lot of folks just don't even try. I had an amazing woman from India DM me probably a couple weeks ago now that was afraid for her job about opening up to having ADHD, because in her culture it was like she was lucky to be a woman in tech, so why stir the pot? But I'm here to give you my little bit of preaching. As I'm going to say, a diagnosis isn't a sentence. I apparently did okay, and I've had ADHD my entire life. I just didn't know it was called that until I was 28. So just because you have a diagnosis, that doesn't mean that you are now doomed to be in mediocrity. That ain't it. You're more than that, for real. You don't just need more faith. You aren't just hard-headed, and you aren't just seeking more attention. You're not broken. And I think that what we need to do is, I'm going to quote Kim Creighton from that powerful fireside chat. We don't need to just break these stereotypes. We need to destroy them. That way they don't come back. And there's also the intersectionality question of it. You might be wondering why SpongeBob's sitting over there. When people think of intersectionality, this tends to be the chart that they give you. It's like, oh, well, you've got your individualism here, and you might be Black or whatever there, and then you've got your neurodiversity, and you're right here in the middle. You got all this space. You got all this space right there. But in reality, it's not that simple. We're not three-dimensional characters. We are three-dimensional, but we're not three-dimensional beings. Some might even look at it like this, like, okay, let's take all of those things, and you want to throw them on top of each other, side by side, nice and neat, and then you get this little bitty dot in the middle right there that's supposed to be you. And then your sponge just looks like the same sponge, just a different color. And we know that that's not really the case either, right? So in reality, it kind of looks a little bit more like that. These are my intersectionalities as I could think about them and fit them on a screen. I've got all of this stuff that causes anxiety on top of my ADHD, on top of being a parent, on top of being a Black man in America, on top of all the different stereotypes that come involved with being a Black father in America, and like all of these other things that just generate more and more anxiety. So ultimately, that common kitchen sponge doesn't really reflect the actual beauty of nature that I might be. So, we saw some hands go up for people that had gotten diagnosed. If you just got diagnosed, I first want to say congratulations, because that unlocks three things for you. The first one is clarity. From now on, you know that you're not hard-headed. You know you don't have these problems just because you're broken or whatever. No, there's like an actual thing that's called ADHD. You can start, or whatever it is, and you can start learning more and more about that and also how to manage it, which is cool. You get a starting point. Like I said, you get access to medications if that's your thing. You get access to support groups if that's your thing. And again, just having a name for it is kind of a good place to start Google searches. You know, what is wrong with my brain is probably not going to be a good result other than like symptoms or, you know, ways to manage ADHD or ways to manage dyslexia or dyslexic friendly fonts, like things like that. I can't read well. Well, I mean, you're going to get Mavis Beacon or you know, whatever if you just say, I can't do this. And the last thing that you're going to get are some new concerns, but at least you know what they are. And I hope that that actually resolves some of the other concerns that you had. And all of these things that you have, other people are going to have as well. So this is going to be my first nugget here. You don't have to share your ND status with your employer. In fact, your employer is not allowed to ask you unless it is absolutely critical to your job. And that's actually protected by the Americans with Disability Act, as well as in the recruiting process. You don't have to tell the recruiter that you have these things. So that's kind of a good thing to know, right? Alternatively, if you don't want to, you can share with someone in your chain of command, or you can share with a peer or a teammate. You can share in confidence. I mean, I would say make sure you trust that person, because they go snitching, then I can't help you. But like, if you trust them, it might be good to have someone at least know that you're struggling with something so that maybe they can help you out, especially if you just got diagnosed. You're going to need time to process things. You're going to need time to like readdress how you're handling things, because some of those behaviors may not be healthy for you. Also, if you're going on medication for the first time, I promise you, some stuff going to change. First time I took Adderall, I felt like Superman stopping, trains with my chest. First time I got off Adderall, I felt like me trying to stop a train with my chest. So this is a good quote from my friend that advocates for why maybe telling your employer is a good thing. You get accommodations. Again, any type of illness, disease as diagnosed or as defined by I can never remember this acronym, but there's a giant book that psychologists have to use and psychiatrists have to use. DSM-5, thank you. I always want to call it the ASD, and I'm like, that's not it. That's what I got. I'm also in the military, so acronyms are a thing. But accommodations can be things like sit-stand desks, better ergonomic chairs, all those things. But they also can start protecting you when you're like, yo, sometimes during the day, I just need to get up and step away from my desk. You being transparent about having a neurodivergent diagnosis can sometimes protect you from any type of repercussions that might come because of that. And if you want to learn more about that, there's some places you can check on. I've read them. They're pretty dry. Listen to this talk. It's probably better, I guess. I don't know. You also don't have to be medicated. This is the thing that gets a lot of people. They're like, I don't want to take Ritalin. It turns you into a zombie or whatever. First of all, I don't really think they give out Ritalin like that much anymore, but okay. But I actually had to get off of medication because it was interfering with my duties as a father. I'm just going to say it like that. That said, there are other things that you can do. If you got religious and personal beliefs and you want to look into those, I understand that. If you want to join a support group, I actually have a recommendation for one that I'm a part of, but those are definitely a thing, and they are available, and they're available to people. And even if you are just kind of trying the medication thing, it's a process. Don't think that 2 pills a day is going to solve your problem. It's going to be, I'm going to try these pills, then I'm going to try half of these pills, then I'm going to get a new prescription for a different set of pills, then I'm going to try those, and I'm going to have to report all of this stuff to my psychiatrist as they slowly start to adjust what will be the medication that you either use, or they'll just say, hey, you're one in the 20% of people with these neurodivergencies that just aren't responsive to medication. It's a thing. There are people that it don't work. Maybe I'm one of them. Probably not, because it just worked for me in a different way. And the only reason there's an NES there is because this is my medication from about 1989 up until yesterday. I actually play Tetris on that Nintendo probably, if not every day, every other day. There are days when I have a really bad day where I'll play that thing for about 6 hours straight. It keeps engaging my brain without any of the negative repercussions of if I lose, which is a great way to keep your brain occupied so you don't have to sit there and think about what you're living with. But that's just something that I picked up. Also, Nintendos are fun. So my advice for you would honestly be, make sure your tires are inflated. I'm sorry about the color scheme. Again, they don't have blue in here if you've noticed. But this is actually a show that I do called Conduit, where we talk about productivity and stuff from a realistic perspective. Like, we talk about what to do when you can't even or odd. What do you do when you're just tired and you're tired of being tired? And what do you do when you need to go on vacation and do something? So checking your tires is really just your time, your intuition, your resources, and your energy. I was actually proud of myself when I figured that out. But your time is simple. How much time do you have? How much time is the things that you're taking on going to take? And how much time do you need to ask others for as you're adjusting? Your intuition. If you weren't diagnosed until you were an adult, that means that as a child, you had to develop ways to figure out, how do I process this? Trust your gut in this one. If playing Tetris for 2-3 hours works and it ain't hurting nobody, hey, play you some Tetris. And then hit me up so we can talk about it. Check your resources, see who's available, what's available, and then ultimately check your energy level, because as you're going through all of this is going to be a stressful time for you. You're going to need to recalibrate your energy from time to time. The other thing, slow down. Everyone talks about ADHD being like, I'm always bounce off walls. You're going to have to slow down. And like I said, especially when the medication kicks in, you're starting to think about, like, how do I do all this stuff? How do I think about all this stuff? If you can't slow down, start passing some of that stuff off. There was a slide in here it's called the priority matrix, and it's like the 4 Ds of decision making. You can either do it, you can delegate it, you can defer it, or you can delete it. Honestly, just start deleting stuff. And if you can't do it, defer it to someone else. And if you can't defer it to them, delete it and don't tell nobody. And if they ask about it, just put it back on. And then you're also going to want to start cataloging things as they're happening. That's one of the things I do even now mentally, is I just have to give myself a quick check of hey, that thing you did or that thing you said, was that what you meant? Was that what you thought? Did you act faster than your brain was processing things? Did you open, as my mom used to say, did you open your mouth before you turned on your brain? It happens. It definitely happens. And then lastly, there's going to be peaks and valleys. You're going to have them high moments again, Superman stopping trains, and then them little dips in there, you stopping trains. You need to take stock of those. Understand the things that are going to put you higher on the hill and the things that are going to start dipping. And notice when they're coming on, because that means you can start putting things in place. Imagine if you were jumping out of an airplane, you were going skydiving. I know a lot of people are like, why would you do that? I don't know. This is your dream. But when you jump out of that plane, you don't just jump whenever you feel like it, right? They tell you all right, we're going to get to a right spot. We're going to get to a right altitude. We're going to get all these things in place for you. And then you jump. And while it's still scary as hell, you at least know you've got somewhat of a controlled area and things happening around you that are going to make that experience probably still, heart-stopping in some ways, but at least a controlled heart stop. And now to the fun part, getting up on stage and giving conference talks about it. I'm kidding. Don't do that if that's not your thing. But the nice thing about sharing your diagnosis with others, not the world, just others, you don't have to share it with everybody, is birds of a feather. Come on, finish the saying. Okay, so usually the people that you hang out with and associate with often have things in common with you. So what you may not realize is, hey, if I got ADHD, not necessarily saying the person next to me has it too, but if y'all vibe on a lot of stuff, there might be a connection. There might be a reason why that's happening. If you can relate to how you were like bad at school, or like you either just knew the answer or you didn't study and wasn't an option, that might be a thing. And also the same anxieties that you might have about your diagnosis, they haven't even gotten to yet because they haven't been diagnosed. And like you said, Black people as a whole aren't a monolith. People in general aren't a monolith. We're all our own pretty sponge. But you know where you find sponges, right? In beautiful ecosystems. And you got to take care of the entire ecosystem or it starts to fall apart. So again, sharing with others will also benefit you because they might be like, yo, me too. And you're like, oh, cool. What did you do when you got diagnosed? What were some of the things that you brought on in your coping mechanisms and all of those things? What was your experience with medication? Has anybody here taken Wellbutrin before? Did anyone get night terrors from Wellbutrin? You wouldn't wish that on your worst enemy, right? Like so when people are like, yeah, they put me on Wellbutrin, I'll be like, hey, don't sleep in the same bed as your significant other. You might kick them. That actually happened to me. I didn't get kicked. I was the kicking person. Yeah, don't do that. But you can share a lot of these experiences. And also, again, just sharing in general. If you always got that one person in your clique that's like a little messed up, and you know they're a little messed up, they might know that they're also a little messed up, and they just need someone to convince them to go talk to somebody about it. Like my friend Jeff. Jeff was in college. He'd been struggling in school his entire life, but made it to college. He's doing better than me already. And his English teacher asked him if he had been diagnosed with dyslexia because her son had dyslexia and noticed some of the same patterns happening. And what that did was it made Jeff realize he wasn't stupid, he wasn't lazy, he belonged, and ultimately he wasn't faking it. I used to say fake it till you make it, but honestly, I got diagnosed and I was like, well, damn, I've been faking it since 3. I don't know, I guess I made it. It's time to stop. And just like we got with our diagnosis, we can give others that same clarity, that same starting point, that same concern. But the one thing I would tell you not to do, straight up, do not do this. Don't use the word just. Just is like the worst word in the English dictionary. Just and can't. And I know can't ain't in there, but I'm from Tennessee and we say can't. We don't say can't. We don't say cannot. We say can't. So why don't you just? Oh, just do this. Oh, just talk to this person. You saying just tells them that it might have been easy for you. What it doesn't say is that it's going to be easy for them. Again, they might have cultural backgrounds that prevent them from just being immediately open. I mean, it's funny because I give talks sometimes and I like to put them around a phrase that a lot of people know of. And it's the only way I can do that is if I know that we have a shared experience. Giving a talk in October about the idea of building communities of diversity being like integrating swimming pools. Because we all know if you're Black in the room, Black people don't do what? Swim. I saw some people mouthing it right there. So that's what I'm saying. So when you say, oh, just get in the water, well, that person may not have had swimming lessons, Just talk to a doctor. I don't even know where to find a doctor. Just write everything down. That's my favorite one. Just write, and then do what with it? Then throw that paper away. Yeah, just no. None of that. Back to the purple slides. There we go. Using words like just, all they do is show your survivorship bias. I know some people have seen the analogy of the airplane with all the bullet holes in it, and they would take these planes and they'd be like, we need to strengthen these areas and da-da-da-da-da. They're getting all these bullet holes. It's no, you don't get it. The bullet holes are the places where the plane can get hit and keep flying and land. The places where you don't see bullet holes are where the plane gets hit and crashes. So you saying just is like that. Oh, just strengthen up this area over here, completely ignoring the blind spot. And yeah, don't take this advice. That's bad advice. But yeah, every inspirational speech by someone successful should have to start with a disclaimer about survivorship bias. I'm a success because I survived, not because I found the cheat codes. Are there any managers in here? Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure I'm talking to the right audience. If not, it's going to be an aspiring talk. Remember employee protection, straight up. If you do not have a right to ask someone if they have a neurodivergence unless, and here's the big unless it is critical to the function of their job, which again, none of these really are. So just don't ask. Remember, disclosure equals privilege. If they're telling you, it's because they trust you, but also because they have the ability to do so regardless of the consequences. So keep that in mind. Also, lack of disclosure might mean lack of privilege. So those people that might be struggling may have that area. You can't ask them, but what you can do is make sure that there are resources available. And this isn't even a slide, so I'm just gonna talk to it. One of the nice things about accessibility is that it makes the experience for everyone better, regardless if they have a disability that focuses on that or not. Us having transcription battles down here is so no matter where you're looking on the screen, if reading is easier than listening to me or looking at me, you're still catching it. This is a neurodiversity accessibility here. It's not, it is also like a deafness thing as well, but it helps. So the more ways that you can implement accessibility into your everyday, you may be helping folks that are struggling with things not just directly focused on the directly disabled. And also make time for neurodivergency breakthroughs and embrace the ways that people do their best work. Like I said, like my doctor told me, the key to my success in my career was because I found jobs that allowed me to do things the way that I do them. And without that, again, I'm that person having a panic attack, like next to my boss. This is what my schedule normally looks like. I check email and stuff, get some coffee. I need my coffee. Get some breakfast, and then in the mid-morning, I'll do some live stream work because what that does is that does body doubling. If people are watching me work, that means I have to be working. I can't just be sitting there looking on cruising on Twitter or whatever. I'll have lunch. Again, I do a couple of podcasts, so sometimes I'll work on those. If I don't have a podcast, I play me some Tetris because, again, when your brain's been grinding, you just need to keep it engaged, but take it off the stress. A little 30-minute session right there after lunch, you good. Then most of my meetings are in the afternoon because I got the itis, and if I don't really want to pay attention, I just turn that camera off. And then I try to get some work done. Then I have dinner, I hang out with my kid, I play some video games, and then I get back to work when she's in bed. I still do my normal 8 hours. The fact that they're not all together doesn't mean nothing. I still get the job done. And the only way that I can do that is because I'm in a job that allows me to. Like my actual ADHD, this is my ADHD coach, Colleen. And she was saying basically her finding a career that was a genuine strength of hers was the final puzzle piece to understanding what was going on. It gave her permission to be as weird as she needed to be. And don't take it personal if people aren't ready. Like, for real. It's hard enough to be open with themselves, let alone be open with someone else. Also, if you look like me, if you look like many of the people in here, if you're the only person in that role, you don't want to be the token face for mental health at your company. You just want to get your job done. And I'm going to just let that speak for itself. No photo. This person didn't even want me to, all they said is I could use their name. And they're actually a good friend of mine because they don't trust their company to not put them on a flyer. Not for any other reason. They don't think they'll get fired. They'll just think that like they'll end up on a brochure for how company X is so diverse. Look at this, you know. And you get to also bridge neurotypical thought to indies. This is big. I was talking with someone else at the conference today, and I was explaining how sometimes when I'm talking, I don't know how to put it in corporate speak. So I'm gonna just talk like I know how to talk, and I'm gonna let my boss handle the corporate speak. And even if they don't agree with the method, they can still actually understand where I'm coming from. And there we go. Oh, a double click. Okay, well now I just broke it. There we go. So yeah, even if they don't agree with all of my thoughts, it gives them the ability to talk through it and understand someone else's perspective. Which again, you know, hey, if you don't like it, cool, but at least you understand where I'm coming from, and you might be able to help me put that in words that maybe upper leadership might understand. And lastly, managers, self-sabotage is a thing. I'm good at it. I'm real good at it. If you notice someone on your team isn't performing, don't assume that it's that they don't know how to do it. Self-sabotage, I was talking to a recruiter earlier, and someone said they literally asked for $30,000 under the asking price because they didn't feel like they were qualified enough to take the job. And they were willing to take a pay cut because it meant a job. So if you notice self-sabotaging behavior, don't do it. Like me, who sometimes likes to work on the weekends, works on days when we're not supposed to be working. I miss my shut it down days. I know there's someone from Elastic here that y'all need to preach that to the hills. So shut it down day is 2 Fridays out of the month. You got the day off. It's a paid day off, no vacation time, none of that stuff. You're supposed to shut it down, no meetings, don't be in Slack, don't be doing nothing. And I'm like, this is great. And then I went to Microsoft and I was like, hey, so we have this thing called like shut it down days. And it's like, nah. And I was like, all right, well, I tried, you know. And if you have to work in those days, at least make sure they know to swap it out with another business day. I go to conferences. I work on Saturdays a lot. It just happens. It's part of going to conferences. Sometimes they're on the weekend. But if I'm there on Monday, my boss is like, why are you here? Like, you were out talking, networking, doing all that stuff. Go. I don't want to see you the rest of the day. Go relax. Play with your kid. Do something. And that's kind of it. But I got some acknowledgments that I want to make while we get ready to wrap this up. The first one, Jen Janot is an amazing person actually getting into tech. If you are hiring and you want to take on someone that has a whole lot of passion about stuff, hit her up, Jen Janot right there. Every Wednesday, she does a topic for neurodivergence in tech. It's one of the most diverse groups of people that I've ever seen talking about mental health. And it's amazing. It's every Wednesday. It's I'm on the West Coast, so it's at noon. No, it's at 1 Eastern time. Again, I talked about my show, Conduit, where we talk about life, productivity, and reality. It's a part of Relay FM. The reason I shout them out is I got a lot of the research and quotes and things from folks in that community. If you want to hear me talk about whatever I talk about that day, you can check that out. That's the QR code there. I'm going to give people a second. I saw someone taking a photo. I think they're good. Okay. The ADHD Guild, this is a group that I'm a part of where it's just a Discord channel. But if I need to go co-work with somebody, I can do it. It is a paid service, so it's not too bad. I think it's like $50 a month, something like that for the Discord channel. But everybody there, it's just accountability. If you can't talk to anybody else, or you can't have anybody else just saying, hey, how's that thing coming along? This is a good resource. I've been in ADHD Guild for like 2 years now. And last, and I sincerely mean it, you can use me as a resource. If you go to that and you're on your phone, it'll give you my Twitter, LinkedIn, all that stuff. Give me my YouTube channel. Don't worry about that. I don't got any ADHD stuff on there. But yeah, I make time, especially for people that want to talk about this. Because like I said, had my boss not noticed that I was exhibiting some of the same behaviors as his son, I wouldn't be in this job today. Because I never would have talked to that doctor that said, hey, you should find jobs that cater to your skill set. I never would have started those conversations and having open dialogue. And I mean, I never would have written a conference talk about it, obviously. And last thing is an ask from y'all. So I'm working on a project. You can go to this site now, please. It's a survey. It's an anonymous survey. And what it does is it asks a couple of questions about how you got diagnosed and things like that. But more than anything, the very last thing, it's like 6 questions. The very last one is an open text box for you to provide a word of encouragement to someone who might be considering getting diagnosed. October is Mental Health Awareness Month, or it's ADHD Awareness Month. My hope is that I can send at least 31 tweets out with a message of encouragement. The eventual goal is to get a year's worth. And then ultimately, I guess the final goal is to have a website where people who might be considering getting diagnosed for the first time can just hear the testimonies of all the people who have done it before them. Because we all got each other in here. We can all talk to one another. They may not. That's it. That's me. That's it. So I will take questions, but again, I'm not a doctor and I'm not the Lorax. Okay, yes.
One thing that I'm experiencing is that very supportive environment.
Mm-hmm.
My supervisor is not trained to know how to test me, so I don't get a lot of work in what I'm supposed to do.
Mm.
I get other work. So if the manager or supervisor, they can be all supportive, but if they have no tools to be able to help you meet your tasking, that's a problem. And I don't know if you've had to deal with that.
A little bit. So when I first got diagnosed, like, even though my boss knew, like, okay, hey, he's got ADHD, just keep doing what you're doing and take your meds, have fun. Like, that wasn't really gonna work. Ultimately, I had to leave the company. I hope that's not the route that you gotta take. I don't wanna give you that bad news. But what I can say that I didn't do at the time was I didn't notify HR. I didn't let them know. Sometimes the boss or the manager not knowing how to actively task is because they don't have the training. And again, ADA says it, not me. They have to provide, within reason, certain affordabilities, certain things that will help you do your best work. And if that means training, that means training. So I would say, and again, like, you don't have to, you're not required to, but if you do, that can open doors and get you some of the help or the assistance that you might be looking for. Yes?
Thank you for giving this talk. I am curious about what seems like a kind of tension, right? So as engineering managers or supervisors, we're not supposed to ask.
Yeah.
And I would never do that. But also you have this story about a boss who sort of helped you find your way. So can you help bridge that gap? Like, what did that look like? What are ways that an EM could be supportive of someone who they suspect might have?
So again, my boss didn't ask me. He just encouraged me to go seek help. And I had to disclose with him after the fact. So that's already a good step right there, is if you feel like there's someone on your team that might be exhibiting behaviors of someone who's neuroatypical, then what you can do is just start putting some of those practices in place and just say, like, I've heard they've really helped with people who have ADHD or ASD or dyslexia. Yes. Okay, please, no. This is why I want to give these talks.
Let me suggest that you check in with your HR, because they may have alternative suggestions on how you manage that, because there is a risk associated with it. And this is like survivorship, like you were just talking about, which this ended really well, but there's potential for that to end really badly. And so I would just encourage you to talk to your HR folks. They probably have some suggestions on how to navigate that. So
I mean, that was going to be my next thing, was talk to someone in HR, because again, you can't ask them directly, but if you go to HR and say, I need resources like this, what do you have? That helps a lot. And thank you so much. I'll give you this.
no, I just don't want anybody to do their job.
Yes, me either. Any other questions? I know we're at time and I'm trying to get to that game night, so. Yeah.
So are there places we can, like as a leader, where we can go and get the training?
I'm gonna say talk with HR. Like HR gonna be the person or the group right there. And if they don't have something, that's something that you can put pressure on. Then you can say like, hey, we should really have this. I don't know of anybody on my team that has it, but it could be possible. And I just want to make sure that I'm doing my best job as their manager. So, and I'm pretty sure there are some resources online. I'm not in management yet. I'm still in IC. Once I get there, I might write some stuff, but like, again, I'm just trying to make it up. All right, cool. Thanks for hanging out with me.